Phillippe de Longvilliers de Poincy was a French nobleman and bailiff, Grand Cross of the Knights of Malta. He governed the island of St. Christopher from 1639 to his death in 1660, first under the Compagnie des Isles de l'Amérique and later under the Knights of Malta themselves. Poincy was the key figure in the Hospitaller colonization of the Americas. On 12 January 1638, de Poincy set sail for the Caribbean on board La Petite Europe. On February 20, he took up his commission as Lieutenant Governor of the Isles of America and Captain General of the French at St. Kitts. He arrived wearing the regalia of the Knights of St. John and soon dispensed with the authority of the French king, declaring, "The people of St. Kitts will have no other governor than de Poincy and will take no orders from the King of France." In 1639 he reached an agreement with the English on St. Kitts that neither nation should grow tobacco. For 1.5 years, he instructed one of his followers, the Huguenot Levasseur, with 60 buccaneers to drive out the English from Tortuga. Levasseur was successful, and on 6 November 1640 a treaty was drawn up between de Poincy and Levasseur which allowed religious tolerations and trade between the two islands. By 1642 he started building the Château de Montagne on his estate called La Fontaine. This was an elaborate building, credited as being one of the grandest ever constructed in the Americas, though today it is in ruins. The grounds of La Fontaine were also heavily planted with exotic tropical plants. The Pinciana was named in his honor, the name later becoming secondarily associated with the Royal Pinciana. He had a town hall erected in Basse-Terre in what is now known as Church Street. This served as his administrative center, where he dispensed justice and administered the colony. On 26 December 1644, the French king sent de Poincy to relieve him. De Poincy refused to let him land. Eventually de Poincy was sent back to France in chains. The Capuchins were also expelled at this time for taking the side of de Poincy. The Jesuits were invited in to take their place. De Poincy bought the nearby island of St. Croix, which he bequeathed to the Knights of St. John. In 1648 first he seized the island of St. Bartholomew, populated by 170 Europeans and 50 enslaved Africans. Then he sent his nephew, Robert de Longvilliers, with 300 men to take over the French half of St. Martin. This was ratified at the Treaty of Concordia. In 1650 he heard that the Spanish had evacuated St. Croix, so he sent Vaugelan with 2 ships and 160 men to capture it. The French set fire to the trees which had made settling there so problematic for the Spanish. Following the intervention of the Knights of Malta in 1651 he paid 90,000 livres to make peace with de Poincy. He persuaded Giovanni Paolo Lascaris, Grand Master of the Knights of Malta, to pay 120,000 livres for St. Kitts, St. Croix, St. Bartholomew and St. Martin. Although de Poincy was immediately appointed governor, Charles-Jacques de Montmagny was soon appointed in his place. However, when Montmagny arrived, like with de Poincy refused to step aside, and Montmagny was obliged to settle down in Cayenne, where he lived waiting upon the death of Poincy until his own death in 1657. In 1653 the French king further entrenched the authority of the Knights of Malta on the 4 islands, retaining sovereignty over the islands with 1,000 crowns to be paid on the accession of each new French king. De Poincy died at the age of 77 on the 11th of April 1660. He was a bailiff, Grand Cross of the Knights of Malta and chef d'escadre of the French Brittany fleet. He was buried in Basse-Terre, probably in the grounds of what is now St. George's Church. He is credited with turning Basse-Terre into a successful Caribbean trading port. The annual St. Kitts Carnival troupe, Les Actors, a people descended from a troupe of acrobats from Africa whom he had imported to St. Kitts as his slaves and personal performers for parties at La Fontaine.